I like whispering into a microphone. I'm like, okay. I got a thumbs up. Okay. And we have, oh, thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Leslie Morrison. I am a member of this church, and I am also the Texas Deputy Chapter Lead for Moms Demand Action. It means a lot to me that Reverend Bossen is someone who supports gun violence prevention, and he is not afraid to talk about it in the pulpit. On Sunday, we as a congregation had a Vidas Robadas installation, Stolen Lives. It is a Texas Impact campaign to help raise awareness about lives that have been stolen due to gun violence, whether homicide or suicide. So outside of our church, you will see colorful shirts with the names and ages and dates of those who were killed, and white shirts that say "Another Life Stolen," and the suicide hotline is 988. We hope that people who maybe don't know gun violence personally will see these shirts, see the ages of these shirts, and be moved. I know on Sunday, my 3 teenagers who were helping to put up the signs, there were teens that were their age, that they're hanging shirts up that are on display. So this was somebody's, child, brother, sister, loved one. So today we are here with an amazing panel of religious leaders, gun violence prevention activists, elected leaders, legislators, those who are going to make a difference passing bills that will help save Texans' lives. We have community violence intervention interrupters, programs that offer support in the community, that are on the ground, that know what needs to be done. We have an educator who goes out into the community and talks to people about what they can do, empowers parents who are feeling overwhelmed by gun violence in our nation. And then we also have a student. We know that our students are not the future, they're right now. Whether they are of age that they can vote, they still have a voice. So between Team Enough and Students Demand Action, groups like this are inspiring young adults to speak out about what we can do, whether or not they're old enough to vote. The first speaker today is Reverend Bossen. I would love to have you come up and share about why this is important to you and what you're speaking on. Thank you.
Thanks again to everybody for coming this morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. Today, our congregation is joining with congregations across the state in calling for an end to the national shame and national tragedy, this country's ongoing epidemic of gun violence. We're participating in the Vidas Robadas Stolen Lives project, organized by our friends at Texas Impact. We've hung 150 t-shirts on our campus. They represent the lives of individuals who died because of a bullet. Here in Harris County, there were 4,100 deaths from gun violence, or guns, between 2018 and 2023. None of these people needed to die. Faced with such unnecessary death, this project is a collective act of mourning and protest. It is also a communal calling for a better way. Politicians sometimes say that gun deaths are a fact of life, but it is abundantly clear. Deaths from gun violence are not a fact of life. They are the result of willful policy choices. They can be decreased through implementation of common sense gun reform, and they increase when gun safety laws are repealed. Policy matters. Policy can protect lives. Policy can destroy lives. Policy matters. That is a fact of life. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Common sense gun laws are an expression of that compassion. Unitarian Universalists are not unique in holding such a theological perspective, and since today falls between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I thought I would invoke a Jewish teaching. It is that one person is a world. This is found in the Talmud, the great collection of rabbinical wisdom that recorded the words of the sages as they wrestled with what it means to lead a good life. There we find a verse asserting that anyone who kills a single person, it is as if they destroyed an entire world. And there we find another verse, anyone who sustains one's soul, it is as if they have sustained an entire world. Every person is a world unto themselves. They contain unfathomable possibilities. Anytime a life is taken out of this world, then those possibilities disappear with them. For the young, those possibilities include future generations. And for those past childbearing age, those possibilities include all of the richness of individual creativity and collective action, bringing a more beautiful world into being. Each person is a world. We each contain a multitude of possibilities. Vidas Robadas, we have 150 t-shirts on our campus. That is 150 worlds brought to an end. None of these t-shirts should be here. They are all the result of policy choices. The United States is unique in the wealthy world for deaths by gun violence. We can mourn them, we can protest, we can dream of a more beautiful world, we can vote, we can change policy, we can bring that more beautiful world into being. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Next, we would like to have Bobby Watson with Texas Impact. He's a Texas Impact policy advocate.
Thank you, Lexi, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Bobby Watson, and I am a policy advocate with Texas Impact. For those of you who don't know, Texas Impact is an advocacy and membership network for people and groups of all faiths. We were founded in 1973, and since then have worked on a variety of issues, including gun violence prevention. As was stated earlier, over 4,100 people died in Harris County alone from gun violence since 2018. In order to honor and memorialize these victims and to act as a catalyst for action, First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, the congregation we're at now, has decided to join Texas Impact's gun violence prevention campaign, Vidas Robadas, or Stolen Lives, a project that seeks to humanize and visualize the reality of gun violence in our communities through t-shirt memorials that name or represent our loved ones that we've lost to gun violence. First Unitarian Universalist is one of 46 Vidas Robadas installations that have been displayed all over Texas. And these installations are not only meant to create awareness, but also are meant to act as a rallying flag for public officials, students, advocates, and the faith community to gather around to work to make our communities safer, just like you see here today. So thank you so much to the speakers here, for the public officials, for the students, and for the advocates who are sharing their stories and calling for action. We know, as was talked about earlier, that part of that action is legislative change. To address that, next year, as a part of the Texas Coalition for Gun Violence Prevention's Advocacy Day, on February 27th, Texas Impact will be bringing every single t-shirt memorial made by Vidas Robadas to the state capitol so that legislators can see the human cost of inaction. Too many lives have been lost, and we are desperate for change. So thank you all for being here, for joining us in this work, and please continue to support these organizers, these advocates, and join us at February 27th. Thank you.
So many of you here know and love Rhonda Hart. She is a fierce advocate who who channeled her grief into action, as many with Moms Demand Action have. I would like to introduce Rhonda Hart, who is actually running for election right now. She is going to make a difference in her community, and she's making all of us very proud.
Oh, there's a step stool. Thank you. My name is Rhonda Hart, and I have been exposed to gun violence since I was in high school. My junior year, 1999, was Columbine, and I remember watching that on the news at school and then going to my part-time job after school at McDonald's and just trying to wrap my head around why students would go into their school and do that to their teachers and their classmates. And then the next year, my fellow student Andrea committed suicide by gun. And we all wore lavender ribbons on our gowns that year. And the administration almost wouldn't let us do that, but we revolted and we did it anyway. And now there's a tree planted at the football stadium in her honor. And you never think that gun violence is going to happen at your child's school until it does. And however many years between Columbine and Santa Fe, I can't do math in my head, but 1999 to 2018, a shooter entered into my daughter's high school and killed her and 9 other people. And I started out with activism with Moms Demand Action, March for Our Lives, basically anybody that would let me stand up and put a microphone in front of my face or a camera, I would speak to them. And then I joined with Newtown Action Alliance and started passing bills. And 2 years ago, I helped pass the bipartisan Build Safer Communities Act, which was the biggest piece of gun violence legislation we had seen in 20 years. And in passing that bill, I had a very negative reaction with my own Congressman, Randy Weber. And in that one interaction, I knew that I was going to run for Congress against him in 2 more years because he had just won re-election. And so here I am. Early voting starts in 2 weeks, I think, not that I'm counting. And I'm hoping to make a difference. So please go out and vote for your gun sense candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. I would love to invite Representative Ann Johnson up here. The last time she spoke here at an event, she had me weeping. I'm not going to sit here and do that now, but we are going to have you. Thank you very much.
Leslie, thank you very much. Reverend Colin, thank you very much. I'm so grateful that this church opens their space for community conversations, which are absolutely important and necessary from every aspect. And walking up here and seeing those t-shirts and then listening to Rhonda, who for years has been channeling her frustration with government failure to actually do something about gun violence, to insist that those of us in elected position do something or change those that are in elected positions. And she said, you never think dropping your child off at school that it will happen until it does. You never think in a shopping mall, in a school, in a church, in a theater, you never think it's going to happen until it does. And that's the state of where we are in Texas right now. The leading cause of death of children in our state is gun violence. And so in a state of politicians that claim to be pro-life, it is time that we actually value and address the policies of common sense gun reforms that would absolutely make us safe. It is a fallacy from those that pound the Constitution at us and the rights and freedoms and the fallacy when they tell you that somehow a gun has a greater right to government protection than living victims. And so I am proud to be a gun sense candidate. I am proud and will continue every legislature that I go to sponsor the extreme risk protection orders. And you may say, what kind of difference could a law like that says that somebody can go to court and say, hey, there's somebody who is a danger to themselves and others, and right now they shouldn't have access to a firearm. You don't have to go but a couple miles away to Lakewood Church, where last year they experienced the torment of an individual and her child with a gun that repeatedly family and government officials had been saying, we need help. This individual needs help. They are in a mental health crisis and they should not have access to a gun. You don't have to question if laws work, because the laws in Uvalde worked. The young man that wanted the gun, the young man that would ultimately go in and slaughter children and teachers in an elementary school, the laws worked. The laws prevented him from getting a gun when he wanted one. When his family said, no, we won't get you a gun, the laws worked. And the law worked to its detriment. That when he turned 18, he was able to walk into a gun owner's shop and say, I want to buy these 2 weapons of war. We all think about the families, but we all must also think about that gun shop owner. What if that gun shop owner had known what the legislature now knows, that that kid was called school shooter on social media? That those parents and those family knew that that kid shouldn't have access to a gun, and that's why they hadn't gotten him. And so we know that the law does work. And it is why we've pushed to raise the age to 21 to get an assault weapon, just like you have to do for a handgun. And I want to thank those of you that are prepared and coming to Austin and bringing those shirts. Thank you. Bring them. Walk all of us through them. Remind all of us that that empty shirt used to stand on the shoulders of a loved one that somebody has lost, and remind them that what we do in Austin absolutely matters. And so I know that you come here year after year after year and you advocate for common sense gun violence reform. Well, let me tell you, you are making progress. So when the Uvalde families came to Austin last cycle, they insisted that that committee take a vote on common sense gun safety reform and raising the age to 21. And let me tell you how they did it. I was a state rep sitting in the House. We were taking up other matters, but there was this noise coming for the rotunda. There was a noise of a flood of mom demand action, Everytown activists, and the Uvalde families that would not let us pretend like they weren't there. And so if you go back and look at the tape on the floor that day, they shut it down, and they turned around and they called the committee and they held a vote. And when they held that vote, it passed with Democrats and a handful of courageous Republicans that said, yes, we should raise the age for an assault weapon to 21. That was progress. And that progress only happened because of your commitment, because of Rhonda's commitment, that she would not the loss of a loved one go unanswered. And so I am begging you that you take up the mantle as you have, come back to Austin this next session, and you have my commitment. And I'm not the only one. There are a number of Democrats in the Texas House that we file repeatedly common sense gun safety reforms. And so I'm going to tell you one more story, because sometimes it feels daunting. We actually did pass gun safety reform legislation last session, a mass shooter bill to address in the penal code people that try to commit a mass shooting incident. And I'll tell you, I offered it in the 87th, and when I did, everybody looked around and said, that's a Democrat, and that's a gun bill. By God, we have to be against it. And so in the 88th, I came back again, and I went in that hearing, and I talked about the impact it would have not only on all of us, but also law enforcement. And when I got done testifying, I walked out. This gentleman ran after me. He had on a shirt that had like a big eagle or something like that on it. He had a gun on his hip that was painted in patriotic colors, and he had a cowboy hat. And he said, you know what? That's actually a smart bill, and we're going to support it. And it passed and got signed into law. So my commitment to you is we will work across the aisle. We have no choice but to work across the aisle. And we will change the conversation from this being political rhetoric to being the absolute necessity of what we need to do to protect Texas children. And so thank you for being in this fight. Thank you for inviting me today, and you have my commitment. Come hell or high water, we will fight like hell to preserve the memory of the loss of your families and to make it right in Texas.
Our next speaker is Carlton Harris, the founder of the Forgotten Third. I will let him talk about the just overwhelming impact it has had on the young men who have been involved in the program. Carlton, please come share about the Forgotten Third.
Good afternoon. We're hearing comments regarding policy, and that is very important because policy drives action. And at the Forgotten Third, we focus on programming. We're a CVI program where we focus on reducing crime and violence, intervention in the community, and the majority of the young men that are referred to our program have a gun violence background. They are majority perpetrators of gun violence, and we take a public health approach to reducing gun violence. What does a public health approach look like? It's number one, defining the problem. What is the problem in underserved communities where young adults are getting their hands easy access to weapons, where you can go to a gun show and purchase a gun without an ID? Those are policy things, right? But when we're looking at the protective factors under public health approach, how do we increase mentorship? How do we increase conversations regarding conflict resolution, anger management? Just recently, I saw a young man lose his life on Interstate 99 and I-10 just from road rage. So what we do for community intervention is to meet the young adults where they are. We help them pick up a job so that they can put down their guns. Oftentimes, we're telling those in underserved communities to put down the guns, but we're not giving them anything to pick up. We help them pick up jobs. We have them pick up education. We help them pick up post-secondary education opportunities. I'm proud to see Mr. Asa Singleton, who is here with me. I've been working with Asa for over 8 years. Asa is our violence prevention lead at our office. He helps mentor the young adults that are in our program. And we say that this is not hard work, H-A-R-D, this is heart work, H-E-A-R-T. I have a young man recently referred to our program that I met exactly 6 months ago. He was a victim of gun violence, a survivor of gun violence. He was shot, the bullet missed the artery, he survived. I met him in a juvenile detention facility. He is now working at our office through work-based learning. He's now pursuing his GED. This is how we interrupt violence from a community level. We have to be engaged, but we need resources. We need more funding for CVI programs when we're talking about policy, because as policy affects the access to weapons, it also needs to focus on the social determinants of health where there's not access to the things that are needed in underserved communities. So I'm proud to say that last year we served 40 young adults. Of the 40 that we served, only 3 recidivated. We have a 7.5% recidivism rate. We just had 4 young adults to just graduate with their GED that are going to post-secondary education opportunities that we have encouraged to put their guns down because we've showed them community-based resources as an alternative to gun violence, as an alternative to picking up a gun when you're angry. Sit down, have a conversation. Where's the restorative justice at? One thing I learned at a young age, that gun violence is a learned behavior. I'll never forget, at the young age of 7, my uncle took me behind my grandfather's house and he put a .38 revolver in my hand and he told me that I would never be a man unless I knew how to shoot a gun. He leaned over my shoulders. I pointed the gun in the air. Pow, pow. From that day forward, I fell in love with guns. I'm a former gang member and drug dealer. I've been out of prison now over 24 years. I'm a credible messenger where I now do my shared life experience and know that this works if we work it. This is the formula: information, plus application equals transformation. So we provide the information to the young adults. We help teach them how to apply it, and then the outcome is automatically transformation. To one person, you may be the world, but to the world, you may only be one person. We have to humanize gun violence prevention by putting a face to the number and realizing that all lives matter and that we have to do something very strategic and important as we prioritize communities that are high in gun violence, number one, due to easy access to the weapons, and two, due to the lack of resources in underserved communities. Thank you.
So next, we have a wonderful woman whose son's life ended from suicide with a firearm, and she goes out into the community and educates other families about the Be Smart for Kids campaign. I love Jane personally. I know many of you here